Here's a bunch of springs going everywhere.
That's what she said.
The kids are watching, guys. The kids are watching.
Welcome to the Wrong Indian Podcast.
Native Americans of all trades, masters of none.
What does that mean? Oh, we have a lot to say. We are not the expert.
But we talk to the experts on a variety of issues.
I'm Brittany Shulman.
Kenrick Escalante.
This is the
Wrong Indian Podcast.
Welcome back to the Wrong Indian Podcast, Season 3, Episode 8. I'm Brittany Shulman.
This is Marie coming at you from the Wrong Indian Podcast. Lovely to see you and be here.
Coyote, Kamadum, Ventiv. I am Kenrick Escalante from the Fort Yuma-Quetzal Indian Reservation, and we are Native Americans of all trades, masters of none. We are the Wrong Indians, and my microphone is working today. I am happy.
And our co-host John is not with us today. However, we do have a special guest co-host, Mr. Dr. Lee Francis, and we'll do fancy interviews, introductions later, where he will also be interviewing himself since he's a co-host today. Say hello, Lee.
Guatsi, y'all. Thank you so much. Dr. Lee Francis here, your resident Indigi-nerd, and I guess co-host of some sort. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'll just be like, I think I'm gonna be that guy in the corner. I'll be like, yeah, so do that.
That sounds about right.
Doing your part. That's right.
Yeah.
And he's our comic relief. No, just
yeah,
kidding.
Sure. Mostly, that's true.
So, we love to support Indigenous creators. So this segment, we are going into our next segment, which is called Indigi-Faves. In this segment, we highlight our favorite Indigenous owned brands that can include makeup, clothing, skincare, shoes, food, drink, art, stickers, etc., comics, books, whatever, what have you. So Kenrick, what is your Indigi-Fave today?
Well, since we have the doctor on, I thought it would be great to bring up a gift that I received over the weekend. And it was from a really good friend of mine and fellow coworker. He gave me, this is the Marvel Native American Heritage Tribute variant cover of the Amazing Spider-Man number 52.
Love it.
And this is by Native American artist Jeffery Veregge. And if I say your name wrong, sir, I apologize. But
you can always come on the Wrong Indian and correct us.
Exactly. I was going to say that just for you to come on board and correct us. So to share a little bit about him, I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen for our YouTube watchers.
And if you're listening via podcast, Spotify or Apple, feel free to join the YouTube family. We'd love you here.
So Jeffery Veregge, he's an award-winning Native American artist and writer from the Port Gamble S'Klallam tribe. Again, I apologize if I'm saying your name wrong of your nation. He's out from Kingston, Washington. He's best known for his use of form line design with pop culture inspiration. And, he's been on over 100 comic book covers, working with Marvel, IDW, Valiant, Boom, and Dark Horse Comics. And you can see some of his work right here that we're showing off if you're watching us on YouTube. But if you want to get to see more of his work and you're just listening to us on the podcast, you can go to jeffreyveregge.com, which is Jeffrey, Jeffery, Veregge, Veregge. And we'll also put it in our show notes down below if you're listening to us on Apple Music or Spotify. But yeah, his work's just amazing. I love it. I don't know how you guys feel about it. I know that I couldn't buy all 4 of the covers that came. In fact, that's what it was. I just couldn't. They just sold out, and I was bummed about it. And luckily, I had a friend who went out and I don't know what he did. He maybe sold a limb. I don't know, but he was able to get them, and he gifted me one of them. So I'm still in the hunt for the other 3. So hopefully I know a doctor who could probably help me.
Hi, that's cute. Yeah, no, we burned through those faster than, I don't know, I'm going to say non-native folks burn through white sage. I'm like... Holy crap! They were gone. I mean, like so legit. Legit jokes aside. They moved really, really fast coming out of November because they were really hot commodities. In fact, right now, from what we understand, is the new variants that he's doing that are coming out for the Heroes Reborn set that's coming out from Marvel pretty soon has got like a crazy rate. They're going to be super, super limited. I think it's like a 1 to 50, like in terms of the something like that. Like I don't know, it could be less, could be more, but it's like they're going to be super rare. We're trying to figure out if we can get more of them in for our own folks in our own home communities, because like we know all Native folks are going to support him. So we're trying to figure out if there's ways to be able to do that. But like right now, those like when he does those variant covers now, I've been watching him since we started the company. And I remember he was busting out like before that, right? Like, so when we started Native Realities in 2014, he had already been like popping online. Like his stuff was already going viral. And then all of a sudden I started seeing him popping up in the comic shops with the IDW covers and the G.I. Joe covers. And then like, he is just, I mean, like he's straight up hot sauce, like in his own home community. He's been doing like giant murals outside of buildings. And he's got like, Marvel contacted him. And I think at the National Museum of the American Indian, he got to do like this big giant, wall mural of his art. And Marvel gave the museum a license, which was like a huge deal because they normally don't do that. So it's crazy. So yeah, man, I'll tell you, if we can get a hold of it, check our shop. But, if you can find it any other way, bootleg it, dude. Cause it's straight, the fact that you got somebody that rolled with you with that is just like, here, you're just like, oh, it's like Simba holding that thing up in the sunlight, dude.
No, it was one of those feelings where like, I had to ask him, I was like, are you sure? Are you sure? He's like, no. He's like, no. I remember you're the one who introduced me to it. I hopped on it, and literally, when you say bootleg, like I said, I don't know what he did. I think he sold a rib, but he did something, and he whipped out this stash of comics because he had more than one, So he had like maybe.
He's all like, you want something over here? Well, I got a little something on this side too. You got a little something? Check my inventory up on this side, yo. Come on. Hey, I got comics.
Keep that friend.
I got Rolex. I got dice. I got sunglasses.
Well, speaking of things that you've got, my Indigi-Fave is actually the Indigi-Match Game.
Oh, yay. Sweet.
Y'all, first of all, this is I don't know what I was expecting when I signed up to get it. And actually, I had a friend who gave this to my daughter for her birthday, and I think I purchased a few. I haven't picked them up yet, but this is a beautiful tin. It's got the instructions on the inside, and then these are so cool. These are so cool, and they're very, when you have small children, anything that might be close to paper is going to be destroyed. These are really nice and really hard, and they're absolutely beautiful. Who was it? Vanessa Bowen who did the artwork?
Yeah, Vanessa did the artwork, and that's what you're saying is legit, because like, we kickstarted this. It was a successful Kickstarter. Thanks to everybody that helped us get these launched and off the ground, because, it helps us build the backstock, and then we can kind of sell those and just kind of keep, replicating them. But like, that was actually one of the things. I think I put out a couple of videos when it was the Kickstarter onto our Kickstarter page, because we were behind mostly because I was getting the sample cards, and I was like, I'm here at the house, and I was like, oh, I remember what it was like. I've got a coming into a preteen at this point, but I was like, oh yeah, no, I remember when he was a little guy, and the kind of the durability. I was like, they were supposed to be like the thickest gram card they had, and those things were just like, and they were just in half. And I was like, oh, we need something better than this. And even the boxes, like you can see, it's totally different. Like we had a nice box design, and I got the prototypes of the boxes, and I was like, yeah, these are going to disintegrate in about 4 hours. Like there was just like, I have a child, I have friends that have children. I was like, the first thing that's going to be in the mouth, and that thing is just going to like fall apart. Cause I was like trying to do whatever. So I went back online. I was like, guys, I'm so sorry. We're trying to figure out a different solution. So I'm just scrambling, and we found these really cool tins. And I was like, we can do this, cause what I know about kiddos on this is that basically they're every, I was like, dude, they're going to eat the sticker on the front. They're going to like, everything's going to fall apart. We want something that's going to like keep it in place, and that the cards are going to stay in one location. That's it. The rest of it, like the booklet, there's a booklet that comes with it and the sticker on the front, and it's so cute. And I'm just like, yeah, these are built for kiddos. This is a very simple, basic matching game. I was like, this is how children that age is where games go to die. Like, that's what happens. They just eat them, they tear them apart. And I was like, at the very minimum, they'll have a scrap of a sticker on the front. Everybody knows from the inside, and you'll still have the cards at the end of the day. Because they're hard. They're waterproof. Those are waterproof.
They're very durable. And I was super, because immediately when I saw, I was like, okay, you can't play with this right now. Let's just put it to the side. And then as I was opening and looking, I was like, oh, okay, cool, we can play with it. And I do love that it does have information on each one of the heroes that are included. Cool. I think this is awesome, and I'm looking forward, to series 2 and 3 and 4. That's
what we want to do. Yes. This is the startup. So
in fact, I'm happy to help you with series 2, 3, and 4.
Well, thank you. We are looking for more heroes, so this will be fantastic.
I've got a list. Go see my TikTok. I have got a list of heroes that I've been building off of.
So, speaking of what you can get on the shop, whatever. So Lee, I'm so excited. Lee opened up a whole world for my Indigi-Nerd and a place for me to find kind of like where I belong in this nerdy spot. And I want to highlight an artist, Ray Deforest, and I took the art off of my wall. My mom and dad had this framed ever so nicely for me for my birthday. I had him in poster form for the longest time, and they moved from apartment to apartment. So in February 2020, my mom and dad actually had it framed for me for my birthday. And then this is my favorite one so far.
Yep.
I love it.
I want to cosplay her. So next time that there is an in-person Digicon, I want to show up to his booth. Cosplay her. And then this is my latest one that has not been framed.
Oh, I love it.
I love that one.
Navajo Golden Girls.
Yep.
They're my favorite. So he's like my ultimate favorite digital artist right now. And I jump on all of his sales or anything that he puts up. And he's at daledeforest.com.
Yeah, his work is amazing.
Love him.
Yeah. And you actually found him through the Indigenous Comic-Con?
Yes, I got this first one here. I got at the Comic-Con, the very first one. And then the other ones I've ordered from, and then I did the pre-order with the Golden Girls because that is my favorite all-time show. And so, and he just makes amazing art.
Travel down the road and back again. Your heart is true. You're a pilot.
Don't get us demonetized, sir.
That's
also.
Hey, you know what? If it's coming out of his breath, it's okay. It's all right.
That's our song now.
Also, so Lee, do you have an Indigi-Fave?
Yeah, so right now, one of my favorite folks, just in general, has been some of the stuff that's been coming out of Insurgents. So NSRGNTS, SRGNTS brand. I think I met them at the Comic-Con as well before I knew their work. They were doing really great stuff. They were like making Kessel runs during the whole pandemic, like just loading up the back of their truck, taking out all sorts of supplies and stuff out to all our communities, in the nation. And they've just got some really fun. They got some really fun and cool. They got like purses and stickers, and I have nothing here with me because I'm in my office and not at the shop. And if I was at the shop, I would be able to show you. I'd be like, here's the stickers. But they're super dope. They're great folks. They do stuff, LA to here to, wherever. So yeah. And murals and just some really radical, like some just, super power and empowering art. And they've got like,
the Wi-Fi in the country hit Lee Francis.
I don't know. They've got fun. Yeah. So a lot of they're just great. So that's my favorite brand. That's my favorite brand. I don't like to pick a favorite because all of you out there selling at my shop, you're all favorites. I love all of you. Do not feel in any way. I know. I mean, I mean, in like, I don't want anybody coming back being like, "Oh, we heard on the podcast that you hate us," and I was like, "That's not what I said at all."
I think that's what I heard.
God, what happens when I'm on a show with a bunch of natives? They're all just like, "No, that's what I heard."
Well, you know that natives are.
Francis loves all of you. It's okay.
Whatever.
Natives are something else, and so is native humor.
Hey, yo.
So here you go, guys. A great way to support the podcast. A great way to have your tea, coffee, something else. We do have these native humor mugs for sale. You can go to BrittanySchulman.com/merch. Use the code WrongIndian to get 20% off, and all the proceeds go to support the channel. Thank you, everyone who has made purchases. We still have a few left, and we're definitely going to need to continue to move. I'm not making that announcement yet. So
Kenrick
we're definitely ready to have more mugs for you guys.
Kenrick is raising his hand ever so nicely.
I'm sorry, the floor recognizes.
I just want to give Brittany A for credit for really trying to get into that segue so she could promote that cup. And then my second question is, why isn't this cup being sold at Red Planet Books and Comics?
See, that's a really good question. I feel like
we've been talking about
that, and we are very excited that we're going to be rolling that stuff in our direction. Yo.
Yes.
All right.
I would never have a product that wasn't sold.
That's the announcement. Boom. Right
yes,
there.
Yes. So we're actually going to transition to our interview, and we're so fortunate to have this series called Creative Natives, where we interview natives who are creative. So today's creative native is Dr. Lee Francis. Dr. Francis of the Pueblo of Laguna is the CEO and founder of Native Realities, an indigenous imagination company dedicated to unleashing the indigenous imagination through pop culture, including comic books, graphic novels, games, toys, and collectibles. Founded in 2015, Native Realities has published the largest assortment of indigenous-centric comics in the world. Through Native Realities, Dr. Francis also founded the Indigenous Comic-Con in 2016 and opened Red Planet Books and Comics, the only native comic book shop in the world, in 2017, which is amazing. We like to call him the Stan Lee of Indian country. He also serves as the National Director of WordCraft Circle of Native Writers and Storytellers, a 25-year organization dedicated to promoting the work and words of Native and Indigenous peoples throughout the world. Lee, welcome to the show!
Let's see it now. You gotta put a little.
So before we get started with the interview, we like to do this segment with our guests to kind of get to know them a little bit better. And the game is called This or That. So we provide you with two choices, and you will tell us which of the two you would prefer. You can elaborate on the answer and why, because that's the get to know you part. And I will start. Would you rather the aliens that make first contact be robotic or organic? Someone take a screenshot.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect.
Say what happened? Is it a robot?
You completely
you froze. It was so funny.
Awesome.
You were throwing kisses at everybody, so they know you love them.
Or he was giving directions.
I'm telling the robots where to go. I'm gonna say robots, because I think at least they'd be efficient. If they're gonna call for my demise, then they're gonna be really efficient in that. Because robots, it's not gonna be like, oh, let's torture them. It's just gonna be like, no, we're gonna kill all of you. Whereas organic could go either way, and I would feel like I would not be very trusting of that. Like in that sense, I'm like, I think I can understand the logic of a robot or an android, but an organic, there's a lot of things that could go wrong with that one. So I'm going to go with the robot.
Makes sense.
If the robot was data-like, anyway, that's a different question.
Did the robot could be
I know that you're
lore-like,
also.
So the robot could be lore-like, so you don't know. You know,
that's very true.
Could be data or could be lore. You never know what's going to play out with that one.
Or it could be Arnold.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is correct.
So, as a storyteller and writer, I would like to know, would you like to only be able to write but not talk, or only be able to talk and not write for the rest of your life?
Talk. It's going to be talk. For those that know me, that one was a given. But no, it would super suck. That would be a bummer. But I think that, like, traditionally, if I still had the chance to talk and the mediums that we have, heck, even if we didn't, I'd just go find a way and be like, well, my fingers don't work. Everybody sit down and listen to a story. Here we go. So, and I could have somebody translate for me. So that would be the other part. Like, I could always have somebody translate out and just be like, and in the beginning, in the long ago time, we emerged. So begins my story. And that would be it, right? Like, and someone could write that down for me. So I'd be down with that.
Okay.
So let me ask you this. Would you rather be forced to dance every time you heard music, or would you rather be forced to sing along every time you heard that music?
I do both, which is so I don't even know if that's an actual choice. Like, that's just kind of what I do. Fine, either. It doesn't matter. I'd be
this
like,
whole episode you've been doing that.
It really isn't. I'm like,
we now have new theme songs for some of our segments.
Like, oh, bummer. I'm like, I'd just be like, okay, let's dance for a little while. This is good, So yeah, I can't even give an honest answer. I say dance because I like to move my body. Let's do that because it doesn't matter. I'm just going to do it all the time.
Oh my goodness. So apparently there's a debate, and my debate, and in my head is like, okay, when
wait. I'm sorry. Is it a debate just in your head, or is this a debate among people?
It's a debate with Kenrick and Brittany, and we're scouring the world of Indigenous folks to figure this out. Okay.
Okay.
Is it Indian taco or Navajo taco?
Give it to him straight, Lee.
I think I did this the last time, and I said Indian taco. I'm sorry to tell you.
Exactly.
I know. I'm so sorry, and this is not meant any way to throw out any of my friends. Here's the reason I said that. First off, it may have started as a Navajo taco. It may be that you can hold that at home, but there are variations, and it may have been a gift to the world, but now it's part of the whole world. We all have a variation on this, right? So our brothers and sisters, there's we don't call it a bannock taco or like a bean bread taco, but it's really still the same kind of thing, right? It's how we all came together. So I'm going to have to say that it has moved beyond. I think it's almost an evolution, if I was to say anything. Like, it's an evolution from a Navajo taco. Now is an Indian taco because it is a gift to all of the world. And that's, it's like a little tiny Indian snowflake. It just goes everywhere and everybody's happy. It's like little dust.
It's a little gift of happiness. That's what it is.
It's just a gift of happiness for everybody.
Well, there you have it, folks.
There you go.
And he's a doctor. He's a doctor, folks. I mean, come on. And we get any more than shit.
I'm not one of those doctors, though, so we don't want to.
My mama's making them. They're Navajo tacos.
That's absolutely right.
When my mom's making them.
Hey, you know what? When I make them, you know what we call them? Burnt
Pablo
tacos.
Jones tacos.
I was gonna say, not good.
So everybody's got a whole different variation for them. Your mom makes them. They're Navajo choice tacos. Me, they're tacos. That's what you can call them. So
if I ever made them, they'd be called burnt leather. That's what they'd be called.
See?
Okay, so before we get into the actual Q&A portion of our show here, I just want to know, and like you've been able to kind of have an evolution because you've been on our show for every season, and we just and we adore you. So let me ask you something that you probably already answered. Tell us a little bit more about Dr. Lee Francis beyond your store and, just you as a person. Something that you probably haven't even shared with us yet in our episodes.
Wait, to talk to me. I'm talking.
Yeah, who are you?
All right.
And he dated himself with that song too. Go ahead.
I know. He did.
Thank you.
Lay down on
Gen X all day long, kids. Gen X all day long.
Dive.
I'm just saying. My goodness. Okay, so one thing I've talked about it, but it doesn't come out too often, is that like So I am definitely, I won't even say a closet. I'm a huge Disneyland fan. And I do get into, arguments with folks. And I was like, yes, and I know Disney's a big corporation and it's eating everybody, and blah, 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 blah. And I completely understand that. And it is one of the biggest, one of my guiltiest pleasures. I absolutely, I'm not a huge Disney collector. I don't collect Disney across the board. We got a few things here and there in the house. Definitely a Star Wars fan more than anything, but that, that's pretty standard nerd, and that's not too far off the mark. But Disneyland, that is one of my favorite. I grew up there. Essentially, I grew up in Southern California. My dad taught at Cal State Long Beach. And so for a good solid 3 years, every summer, anytime I could get $20, I could hustle my parents out of $20. Every other weekend, me and my buddy, this is when, you got to remember, this is back when parents didn't care about us very much because we're Gen X. So they were just get out of the house. We'll see you in 18 hours. We don't care. Leave it, So I'm 12, 13, and me and my buddy would go, and I was a big boy. I was still a big boy at 13. And I think they had the cutoff at Disneyland at 12, but you could get in for the kids price and the in-state price, which, you want to say back in the 90s, 20 ain't nothing to sniff at, but so it'd take me about, maybe 2 weeks to bust it, and I'd be hustling whenever I'd be oh, could you give me another $1 for cleaning my room? And they're we just gave you allowance. And I'd be how about I sell you some baseball cards? I'd be hitting on my folks all the time. Right. But I would get that. And so for 3 summers in a row, my buddy was this kid who was he was way shorter than me too. He was a small guy. He was down to here. So we definitely looked like he was 9, so we'd basically just have him go up to the booth. I'd wait in the back and he'd get 2 tickets. And then we go walking in. And so that was, I spent most of my time there. So now going back, looking back at it now, once we get out of our COVID caves and everything kind of starts to clear up, I've taken my son 4 times. We live here. It's not I can even get there easily. This is, this is the full vacation investment. My wife's why do you want to go again? I was it's Disneyland. So I'm taking Laguna kids there. I took a bunch of my students there one summer. We got a backstage tour. Any chance I could get would be something for me to go. So I'm a huge fan of it. Like I said, I know the balance. I know everything, about whatever, but I'm man, that's still my guiltiest pleasure of all. I love it.
I've never been to Disneyland or Disney World. So we've been planning since, I've had kids to do that. Also sledding. I've never been sledding either.
Sledding.
So I know. Well, every time I was up in Minnesota when it was cold, I was pregnant. So they kind of frown upon sledding and being pregnant. But anywho, last time we talked to you, we were really still processing the pandemic and really talking about it as the dream time and all that. How have you and all of your ventures been faring since then? Also, will there be a Comic-Con? Will there?
I need to belong somewhere.
Listen, so this actually makes me feel really good. I'll work backwards. Thank you all so much. That makes me feel really good about, continuing on what we're doing. There are plans in the works. Probably more than likely, we're going to be back at March 2022 with the big full event. We got about a year. We're looking at something kind of small on the East Coast in the fall because we want to bring our East Coast brothers and sisters in. We've been very west of the Mississippi for this, quite some time. And I mean, even in Melbourne, Australia, way west of the Mississippi, right? So so we're wanting to try and do that so that we can do a little more outreach. I know there's so many more native nerds that are on the East Coast that man, they ain't getting out here anytime soon. So something small. The biggest thing for the Comic-Con is really just making sure that we're safe, right? And it's the hardest part right now is trying to plan any event and still keeping in mind, we can do all we want, right? To wear masks and have the hand sanitizer and, do the distancing and only one person at a time at the booth. But there's 2 things that I have an issue with is one, you don't want to be that organization that all of a sudden starts spreading a disease because somebody came in and coughed. I certainly don't want to be that organization. Any other org that wants to take that shot, that's between them That's between themselves and them, right? 2, I guess there's 3 things. 2 is we don't want to be that organization that catches somebody that's asymptomatic and we take it home to grandma and grandpa, right? Like, especially with our communities right now and the vulnerability that we have with our elders in these spaces, and a lot of the folks that come out here coming out from the res, and we're still in an embargo in many of our locations. So planning around that is tricky, right? Mm-hmm. And then 3 is we want the event to be the event, that folks have been to. Like, I'm sure for a foreseeable future, we're probably still going to mask up. We'll probably still have hand sanitizer. But if we're distancing and we're, and there's like, that's not really a Comic-Con. It's like a forced Comic-Con. It's like you're going there just to try and get back to normal. You're trying to go to, and I was like, even San Diego canceled this summer again. They're still going to go digital, given the fact that they bring in like 1.5 million people, probably a smart call. I'd love it if we brought 1.5 million people, but we don't have that many people. But nonetheless, I mean, with the couple thousand, the 1,000 that we bring in, that's still a big chunk of folks. And we want it to be where people can feel comfortable, where they can enjoy the time that they have there in a way that is not like, like this, like you're constantly on edge, like you're powering through. Mm-hmm. And, or we don't want to be the other organization that comes off being like, no problem. It's just like, until it's a problem. And if you escape out of it, kudos for you. Brilliant. Like, great. And if everybody wants to shut up at that point, because you caught it and then you get in there and just like, well, it was a bad call, but that's okay. I'll just power through. I'm like, man, that's somebody else's choice. That's not one I'm going to make ethically or morally for our communities and our folks. So anyway, all that being said is the reason why we're looking at 22. If we can do something small in the fall and feel comfortable and feel good, that's going to be an East Coast bump, which is going to be kind of exciting. Yeah. And then what was the other question? Shoot, I got lost.
It was just how have y'all been?
Oh, how we handle it. Yeah. So it's been really interesting. It's been, like this, kind of this really cool creative time. And in fact, I'll kind of tease out, because I already teased out, we've got some big announcements coming for our new Native comic universe. It's the Native Realities universe. We're going to have a nice bump. I don't know when this is going to go on air, or if it's now, but we got some cool announcements that are going to be coming up, that we're going to build out that full comic book universe, not just some of these little one shots or some of the things that we've been working with, but something where we're going to have characters and history and, so I'll tease out, I can tease out my writing. So one of the things that we're going to be launching is, it's called, Cindy Coyote, Trickster Extraordinaire. So she is the daughter of an Ojibwe woman, and Coyote, the trickster. And so she's essentially, as old Western ideology, she's a demigod. She has these, she's like Hercules, right? So she has powers, and she has powers of invincibility, essentially, kind of like Wolverine-esque. Because if we know from our Coyote stories, Coyote never actually dies. It just appears in the next story. So it's obviously the Coyote just like has a healing factor and just like pops back up, and then it's Coyote again, right? So kind of her role is she took this on, and she's a high school student. So it's kind of like Buffy meets Native communities meets Trickster, and so she's this high school student that embodies the Trickster stories. So when she finds kids that are going to do stupid stuff, and she goes out and does worse stupid stuff to scare them straight in the worst possible ways. So for example, in the opening that we've written, is some kids want to go climb a water tower. She goes and Leroy Jenkins the thing, climbs up on the water tower, and then basically just falls off, right? And then the kid, she falls and just boom, all busted up. All the kids scream, freak out, run away. And she's basically like, don't worry, this happens all the time, because she's been doing this a lot, right? And so she shows by the worst possible, I think one of the lines in there is it's Scared Straight Extreme Edition, right? Which is, And then she gets tangled into all sorts of other craziness is all good comics. So that's kind of the opening of our first one. So she has to battle tricksters and like elder tricksters and monsters. And so the world we're creating is where there are monsters, there are always heroes. And so that's the world that we're creating. So, and it kind of covers a whole range, and essentially all the stories we've been telling since time immemorial, all those monsters exist and have found their way back into the world. And so there's heroes in multiple ages that battle those monsters. So that's what we're creating. So that's our Native Realities universe. So there's your teaser. And we'll have graphics, and we got some cool stuff that's coming up. So I think to your question is, it's been a really creative time. We had the chance to kind of stop and think, figure out what we want to do, and then also problem solve. So a lot of it is like opening up our marketplace to sell things like mugs and work with other Native folks and, bring in more options to be able to get more of this stuff into the hands of people. Because so often it's really micro oriented. And even as we're seeing with the vaccine, I sat there talking to my wife with the vaccine, and I was just like, the vaccine's done. And everyone's like, huzzah. And I was like, all going to depend on distribution. That is the bottom line, right? So if you can do this, you can get into, like, you've got to be able to distribute. So that's where we are. We're trying to figure out how to amp up the distribution for getting the work that native creatives are making into the world. And back and forth, like trading out, being like, oh, you got something cool there that we've never seen. Why don't we bring it down here and we'll get you some comics or whatever. So that's what we're looking at.
Sweet. So just piggyback on what Brittany just asked you. I mean, give us more, man. Like, what is the newest sweaty nerd news that is circling around us Indigenous people?
Wait, say that again? Nerd news. I'm sorry.
Sweaty
I don't know.
Nerd news.
Sweaty nerd news. That's good. What is our sweaty nerd news? Great googly moogly. There's several things that are coming out. Obviously, the Marvel stuff is still bouncing. That's kind of moving back and forth. I think the rumor mills. There's like they're continuing to try and build some of this stuff out. There's they're talking about doing Echo, coming off of Daredevil as a potential film and licensing that out. Tim Truman is getting ready to finish up Scout Marauder, which is really exciting. So he kickstarted that a couple of years ago, and I think he's kind of in the last throes of putting everything together. I think there's another couple of other folks that are doing some comic work, some things that are popping. I want to say maybe there's some news on the horizon with The Heroes. I think that's Keith Jim's book that he's done. So I think he's getting close. If he hasn't already, I know he's getting close around issue 3. I know, Captain Paiute I saw that on Facebook for Teddy So's thing. They're bumping close to, he's trying to get his next issues out. So like all these Native folks are just starting to put out more books, and I'm just thrilled. I was like, this is going to be awesome. Like, we're going to have so many comics, and that's been the dream, right? Like this kind of kickstarting and being like, all right, where can we get them, get them out the door. So this is just like, it's going to be super exciting.
Awesome.
That's the sweatiest I can get you. I hope that got you a little damp. A little bit.
So wait, quick question. I think you mentioned it in the beginning of your answer there. But isn't there like a Hawkeye spinoff that's going to be with a Native American character?
Was it Hawkeye or Daredevil? Because it's Echo is the Daredevil character, not the Hawkeye character. So yeah. So okay. Echo, and they're looking at some Native folks to kind of spin that off. And I think that may be coming out from Marvel. Again, this is all rumor. Nothing's confirmed. This is some speculative types of stuff. So nobody, I'm like, until we see it cover.
What is it they say when they're it's a rumor? Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yeah. I mean, hey, maybe these news outlets are incorrect, but they're calling it the Hawkeye spinoff.
Okay.
And it's Echo. Yeah, you're right. It is Echo. But I think she was also
in Daredevil. But I thought hey, any nerds out there, if I got it wrong, please, re-nerdify me. So and definitely bump me up and roast me on Twitter, which is fine. You know, I'll take my licks if I'm wrong on these things. But that's still cool. You know,
that's great.
We've been talking about the pandemic and how at the beginning we were kind of scrambling to figure things out and put things into place and whatnot. My just along those lines, in what ways has the pandemic made you think outside of the box to reach your Indiginerds with like an Indigipop X, your Red Planet books and comics, everything? So how has it fueled the creativity to reach out to a wider audience of Indiginerds?
Yeah, I think, well, and first, I mean, like the first thing, not even just Indiginerds, it was just community based. So when we hit the first couple of days, like weeks off the pandemic, one of the things that I tried to bump in was the posters that we did. So the posters that came out, which was our propaganda posters, you know, that were like, take care of your elders, you know, kind of stuff like that. Because I was seeing so much chatter online that was like a lot of folks that were like, you know, it's this moment of fear. And then all of a sudden everybody just like, we already survived disease. We made it. We can totally survive this too. And I was like, I know a lot of those boys. You know, a lot of them are my kids, you know, whatever. And I was like, I get your spirit and I like your energy. But the only reason you survived is because 90% of the population died. Okay. So like,
yeah,
if we're hitting those kinds of numbers, calm down. That was, so basically it was kind of like, you know, I wanted to put out there, I was like, yo, I get where you're coming from. And the warrior spirit is so important. We need that. We need that for our communities. We need you to be strong. You know how you be strong? Take care of your grandma and grandpa. You don't need to be balling over here at the beginning. So that was where a lot of those posters came from. And my first thing was just trying to get money. Like we got some grant money, like right out the gate. And it was just like, hey, I just need like all of my Native friends, like our gig completely shut down. And so did everything else. So all of the events that they were at, you know, were gone. And that just evaporated for Native creatives that run on that aren't running businesses, but are running like creative enterprises, like legit, just like I make you something, you pay me for that something. End of story. We're completely screwed and are still struggling, right? Everybody was scrambling at that time. So I just tried to get something out there for folks as much as I could, little bits of just to do art. God, you know, I was like looking at being like, man, I wish I had that Disney money or that Bezos money. I just been like making it rain, right? Like, here's all my friends. You get to play. You get a card. You get a car. I was like, you know, I wished, right? That was my biggest dream. So a lot of that was just trying to like, you know, first and foremost, it was just trying to like do a little bit of damage control. And then then I said, like, there was this quiet time. Like, there's this quiet time because the shop shuts down in March. We don't open back up till June. So it was like April, May was this really, really quiet time, like everywhere. Like I remember going out with my kid on his bike and there was like 2 cars on the interstate. That was it. Yeah. Like coming on I-40, it was just like, there was like 1 car. It was like looking at an old country road and there was like, and then like a truck. And that was like it. And it was crazy. It was eerie. It was hard. And so in that quiet moment, it was a chance to kind of like, that was a reflection piece. I was telling a story just the other day, like this office that I'm in right now, I've kind of refurbed it because I was like, okay, as business started coming back, I was like, well, I need an office space. But before that, I had like a couch behind me, you know, and I have my whiteboard and I brought the shop was completely closed. So I was like, I just kind of raided the shop. I brought my speakers and a projector from the shop and I set up like a little theater in here. And when my son went to bed, my wife went to bed, like for a couple of days, I just watched movies, which I hadn't done in quite a long time, like just for fun. And so I think that is part of the key about the creativity was I had a moment to just kind of like go back to enjoying stuff, like not thinking like, ooh, how does this Native film fit with the Comic-Con? Or, ooh, you know, what am I looking at here that's problematic? You know, how we all do, right? Like, you know, and I try not to do that as much, but I just watched I watched Apple Plus. I watched Dickinson, which is just absolute. I don't even know. It's like watching stuff when I was 13 years old and I just enjoyed the heck out of it just because I knew it was cheese eating popcorn, you know, Twinkie television. And I just enjoyed the heck out of it. So I think it was really around what that space was is the creativity popped from a moment to go offline. Like, oh, I'm still online. Everybody's typing all the time. I'm typing angry things. Everybody's typing angry things, and everything's going on. But I think in those quiet moments, it was a moment to just really just allow the mind to expand in a very quiet way. It's a different type of meditation, right? So I think that was where a lot of the creativity popped from for us to move into these next stages and recognizing things that we wanted to do and recognizing things that we want to create. We've got another thing that we're working with Dale on called Trickster Dice. That's going to be hopefully coming out. So one of the other games we want to pop. And basically it's, there's these things called Rory's Story Cubes. And they're basically like little story dice, and you roll them and then you kind of arrange them, or you roll a couple or whatever. And then you use them with kiddos. So it's still a kids-based game to tell a story. And I've been thinking about it for a while. I'm sitting here just staring at stuff in my office. And I was like, I think we can do this. And I just started writing down notes. I was like, why don't we do this with our tricksters? Right? Because they're not super sacred stories. I mean, there are times to tell them, but we can genericize a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. They're not hero stories. They're not ceremonial stories. There's so many in the public domain that I feel fairly comfortable, and we can sort of like do a broad brush. It's like, it's Raven, it's Coyote. Like there's a lot, like we can do some of those spaces, but it gives us, our kiddos, a chance to tell fun stories, and putting them into shenanigans. Like they have to battle a monster and then they have to go through 3 obstacles. And I was like, these would be super fun. And so partly it was just this way to kick it at home and just start writing the notes down when I've not had the chance to write the notes down. I mean, I will say that in some ways, business wise and creative wise, it was a chance to be a creative again. Because for 4 years, I've been running this crazy Comic-Con and going to multiple locations and countries, and it's a big old event, like trying to get the money and then contacting people and getting guests. And like, it is time consuming. And so without that, and I do miss it. So I don't want to say that, we're coming back, but without that, it gave me a moment to catch my breath and start to just think about cool things that I wanted to put back in the world again. Right.
It's like a good reset. It was a good reset for all of us. Right. So, unfortunately, John, he's not here, but he knew that you were coming. So he did ask us some questions. So one question he has for you is, what was and this is your flex moment. What was the most expensive item you've ever sold inside your shop?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think there's 2 that come to mind. We sold there was a pretty hefty painting that we sold in the shop. So it was one of, I'm trying to think of who it was, but it was an original. It might've been Sean Bayal's, or it might've been, I don't know if it was Dale's, but it was full art, great painting. I want to say, several $100s, because we don't gallery wise, right? Like as a single object, we don't gallery out. Second stuff that we sold was those Marvel Indigenous voices, because once they sold and I think the limited covers, the David Mack cover with Echo on the front, and there was another cover. The minute they were gone, they hit the market like immediately, and I think we bumped them for after we were out, or after the market was out, you couldn't reorder. Like we went immediately to the resale market. Like it was just like, hey, we're gonna bump these. We're going to bump these out on, I don't think we put them up on eBay, but I was just like, this is now limited edition. So we were just watching market prices. And I think it was like, they were moving for 100 and something. So for one of the comics, because we don't do rated comics at all. So we're not pushing, that was the closest we got. I think in terms of some of the stuff that we put out, we get a few rare books here and there, but I think those were like the big art piece. And that, in those comics, I think we bumped a couple of those for definitely, close to $100 each, just because the way that they dropped, we watched the whole thing and it was like, hey, we popped them up online and we do a marketplace. We're just like, hey, if you don't want to buy them, don't buy them. But if you're wanting it,
here it is.
You can look somewhere else. And because we're not, we're not trying to shill anybody. We're just basically like, hey, if you're going to find it over here for that much, you can find it over here at our place for the same amount. Like, I'm not going to see something when the only copies available are on Amazon or eBay and they're all going for $800, not what they went for. And we're just like, you can get it for $5.50 at our shop. $5.50. I'm like,
we're just so happy to be here.
Yeah, we're just really happy that you get a book. I'm like, yeah, that's insane. You know, like, we don't try to wreck anybody, but we're also going to stay competitive. You know, so
right. Okay, so I'm going to lead into my question now, and this is just a selfish question for myself because opening day is Thursday.
Yeah, I think Marie and I are going to check out.
Will the Nats win the World Series?
I don't. I love my Nats. I don't think so. I think they'll make it into the playoffs again this year. I think they'll make it probably into maybe the NL Finals. The East is tough, dude. Like, the East, the Mets are looking great this year. The Braves were pumping last year, obviously. So I'm like, you know, it's gonna be a tough division. You know, at least coming out of that. So I think if everybody stays healthy, we have a really good shot. And then kind of all bets are off, as we saw in 2019. Like, all bets, you know, everything goes out the window. Who knows? Nobody thought the Nats were going to win the World Series. They did. So I think once you start to get really deep into the playoffs, momentum can change. It depends on when they peak. I think they'll make it into the playoffs again this year. I think everybody's healthy coming off a lot, because last year was just a bummer year. Legit. Marie just bounced. She's like, I'm out. I don't even want to be around for this.
She literally wants nothing to do with
She literally just left for baseball. She's like, nah. I got no time for this. So yeah, I'm super stoked though, just for the season in general. I love me some baseball. That's one of the other things we've been working on. So in good tie-in is we've been trying to get a native baseball comic sorted out as well. So we've been working on that to tell cool native baseball stories. So it's one thing that it's in the pipeline, and we're trying to get some momentum on it, some wheels.
Right. Well, I'm just trying to take advantage of it, because I know when I moved over here to DC, I kind of slept on the season that I should have really bandwagoned.
That was the one.
That was the one. That was the World Series. Yeah, I caught it late, and so I didn't go to any of the games or nothing. But I caught the playoff buzz, and and then I was like all in. I was like, all right, I'm going next year.
No.
Then the pandemic.
No, you weren't.
Yeah.
Listen, the only thing I ever want that I tell my wife is I might have said this on the last one, is she's like, what do you want for your birthday? And I was like, baseball weekend. That's it. Like, I don't mind. I'll take baseball presents. I like all the other things, but baseball weekend is the gift to myself. I go sit up in the decks. Everybody leaves me alone, or unless you want to sit and talk about baseball. Otherwise, everybody just lets me do baseball. That's my birthday present to myself, to do baseball. And everybody knows it at the house. And last year was just the worst, because she was like, what did you want? And I was like, baseball. And my birthday hits a month after everything shut down. She's like, what are we going to do now? I was like, nothing. This year is over.
I don't think birthdays counted last year.
No, I've skipped it entirely. She's gonna be like, how old are you? I was like, how old was I last year? That's how old I am again. Well, this is the one that's coming out.
We all get a year.
Well, I mean, if you venture your way out this way, I mean, we get.
Heck yeah, dude, we'll totally go up. It's been years. I've been up there twice to Nats Park. It's one of my favorite ballparks, because I love being able to see the whole Capitol on the skyline. It's fantastic. So yeah, I'm stoked. When I get out there, we'll hang out. We'll kick it.
Absolutely, man. Let's do that.
Go Nats, baby. Washington all day long, or Wu-Tang, one of the two. I don't know, something.
West Side.
we're throwing up something.
I don't know. Is that allowed? I'm sorry. I think that's copyrighted. My bad.
Make a touchdown. Yay.
Blur my face. Blur my face.
Those 2 points. 2 points.
Nice. Go team. Go.
When is kickoff? Just kidding. Well, we're one step closer, I think, day by day as time goes on, to the light at the end of the tunnel for the pandemic, right? And there are a lot of things that have come out creatively, I think, in my life and all 4 of our lives, right? And my thing that I really enjoy is the Good Relatives Book Club. And that came out of sort of like an idea with Brittany to kind of bring families together around really awesome books that come from your bookstore. But my question for you is, what is one thing that happened that wouldn't have come to fruition without the pandemic and the shutdown?
No, that's a great question. I think it was really the turbocharging on doing things like that, right? Creating this space and making more of a stand about where we're sourcing things from, right? So it was talking through the whole holiday to relatives and posting online and just being kind of pissy online too. Like on my page, I was just like, nice. I love it when y'all decide to like post your books, but you don't talk about native bookstores, right? I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm going to be that jerk right now because it's the only way that we can continue to create our own sustainable systems and force the industry to respond to us. So I think what it galvanized for me, I don't even think creatively, it was more like activistically, I'm not sure that's a word, but like it was more of saying like, hey, you know what? We need to be making our own spaces, economically, physically, relationally, and building on those spaces, because otherwise we just keep undercutting what we're doing. I mean, somebody put it out that all the money that that Bezos's wife, that she gave truckloads of it away, right? Like all that money that she got, he made that back in something like a week, right? Like that's insane to think about the amount of money that person has. And yet here we are, and we use this there's a really interesting dynamic that comes from the fact around economics, which is Amazon is so dominant in the marketplace that it has created its own static, authoritative field. So for example, you get a book out, well, the easiest way to post about it is to post it to Amazon, right? And not, I see a lot of people posting to their publisher, but there's a lot of folks that I know that like, they're like, hey, I just got published. This is amazing. And they post the link to Amazon because it generates a certain amount of authority. And that's different than say, if you got posted to, Red Planet, or I'm trying to think of some other small publishers that we know, like
Birch Bark.
Birch Bark, right? Well, and, as a bookstore, but even just some of the smaller native publishers, like we have even some of our tribal publishers, right? And where did they get the bump? Like, where did they get that bump? Because it doesn't have the authority. And so it's so very interesting to see that. So for me, it moved into this space. I think the pandemic really shifted me into saying, like, how are we creating and supporting our own enterprises, our own communities throughout, like, across the board. So partly one of the things with Good Relatives was, all right, here's this little book club. That's great. Order it from us. Don't order it from Amazon. Quit ordering it from those folks. They got enough money. There's enough people that are there, right? And, that are already supporting that stuff. And, here's, but here's 4 native bookstores that you can support. Here's a Black owned bookstore that's now the largest bookstore in the Rocky Mountains, out of Denver, that you can support. Go to those places, because in my mind, a lot of the rest is just talk from both sides, whether it's internal whether it's native folks looking for authority, or whether it's our allies that say, oh yeah, that help us out on, like, in November. And then we're just like, well, do you want to buy from this shop? And they're like, no, let's, so we had to put out a lot of messaging and being like, yeah, we know it's going to take longer. That we can't get it to you. I don't have a drone army to drop this stuff like Santa Claus down your chimney. Like, well, but partly that's a sustainability thing that we talk about with indigeneity anyway, right? Like, we're trying to calm everybody down and being like, hey, this will take 2 weeks. Slow it down, support and build, reset those expectations. And I will tell you, to my hypocritical whatever, the beginning of the pandemic, I was just like, ordering everything. Give me all the stuff. Amazon,
toilet paper.
But over like about 4 months, I've really kind of broken that habit. So I still actually look on Amazon for things I like, and I put it into my shopping cart, but I don't buy anymore like I used to. I actually try and buy directly from wherever it may be coming out of. And that could be another giant company. I get it. It could be Williams Sonoma, or it could be, like whatever, but I try to buy a little bit more specific and targeted. So that's one of the things that came out. And I think that's the other side of the creativity is there's the enterprise or the business side is how you get this kind of stuff out to all the people that want that kind of stuff. Right. And so that's really what the pandemic allowed me to focus on.
Yeah. Cool. And I'm really quick before we move on. Yeah. I noticed that like with Amazon, it's just they throw a box on your porch, and then with Native owned businesses and BIPOC owned businesses, you get a nicely tied in a bow package of love. I mean, you really like quality.
Yeah.
Quality.
It's like a little goose. You just kind of shoot it out there. It's really lovely. And I've loved that the entire time. What did I get? We ordered from, was it Buffalo Star, I think, the soap company? It's out of Taos. Yeah. So it's a native owned soap company. Man, I got the prettiest box ever. And I got all these stacks of soap. It was so nice. And I was like I was like, well, we need a bunch of soap. And we were talking with them, maybe trying to get some wholesaling into the shop. But I was just like, well, I'm going to start with me first. I'm going to give you like just, earnest money, and then I can give you like business money. But I was just like, man, it came and it was so pretty. They're all hand wrapped and they all smell so good. And I was like, yeah, I want to work with these people forever. This is how I want all my stuff, right? I want everything to show up to me in like a little tiny wrapping, just whatever it is. Could be a cookie, could be a puppy. I don't care. That's how I want it to show up.
Don't go shipping puppies, people.
Somebody brings me a res dog. I want him wrapped in paper with a bow on the top. If that's how it's gonna play out.
It has a little Walmart bag as a bow.
Oh no! Just over the leg that's missing.
Right. About right. Yeah. No. That's a little bionic dog.
So, fresh from the internet again, from John, who's not here. His second question to you is, do you have a favorite Native comic? If so, which comic was it, and who was it by?
Yeah, that's a really good one. It's like trying to pick amongst my kids. Was this Sophie's Choice? Like, somebody's gonna get mad at me, whatever my answer is.
Tell us more about Insurgent. What?
We already went
go back.
This.
Pass.
No
I'm going home. This is good.
Faves.
Oh wait, no. What was I supposed to do? That's it. I'll just snooze out. What's my favorite? I think one of the most influential of Native, by Native, for Native, about would have to be Scout and Timothy Truman. I got to go back to the old school. Dude, he was putting that stuff out in the 80s when no one was looking, right? And John Proudstar was next, right? So John was in the 90s, but I think Tim coming out doing Scout, and it has been influential. I've talked to other folks like Proudstar and all these other, folks that came out of that talking about the influence. Like, here was a Native guy, a Native character, swimming through this post-apocalyptic American wasteland in some things that are really scarily prescient, like the fact that, like, if you go to Scout, you read it, it's that America's become a third world country because the rest of the world finally just got tired of dealing with us. And then they just stopped trading with us. And I was like this last 4 years was like, I called Tim on the phone, I think like maybe midway through the pandemic, because he was working on Marauder. And I was like, hey, did you think this was ever going to come to pass? He's like, man, I don't know. I can't even figure it. And it was hilarious because I was like, this is kind of the, like, people don't like us as much, And I was like, I didn't really expect this to be a thing, right? But I loved seeing that it was on its own terms. It was Native folks freedom fighting, doing the Mad Max style something. And I think that was probably the most influential for me. In terms of making comics, I will say that, like, of the things that I've created, the work with Wishoyo on Six Killer, just my nerd side was probably my favorite to write at this point.
It's a joy to read. I really loved it.
And that's coming along too. I got to figure out her schedule. That's always the big thing right now. She's like definite hot sauce at this point. She's ghost pepper, whatever ghost pepper sauce is. Like, dude, she is just killing it. And, so when I can slot in the next books, because I've outlined everything, we've got scripts and stuff, it's going to be, just trying to make sure that it fits her schedule and being able to, she's a rock and roll and working artist. So
I really want to switch gears. Because you mentioned earlier about being a Disney nerd. I know you have Disney Plus. I know
Yes.
you've watched all the things that are on Disney Plus.
Pretty much.
Well, I was going to start off with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but let's talk about Raya and the Last Dragon.
Okay, that's the only one I haven't watched yet. Don't spoil it for me. All right, shush, everybody, shut your whole faces. All of you. I run a company. I can't watch all the things all the time.
Okay, well then, Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
That I can do. The reason why I can do that is because I can do that in 30-minute bits. It's a little harder at that.
Raya and the Last Dragon's 2 hours, and it's like, whoa, okay, but it goes by so quick. It's harder at the house to be able to
sit down and get that kind of time. And I know I want to watch it with the kid, but then we've also got like all of the other Marvel things that I'm catching him up on. So yes, I will totally make my nerd excuses. I'm totally fine with that. I like to I like to savor, right? So I don't even get to watch the Marvel stuff when it comes out midnight on Friday, where all my other nerd friends, I was like, it has become Saturday morning cartoons for me. Everybody in my household knows that Saturday morning from like 6 to 8:30, Dad's in the office and he's just watching TV. Nobody bothers him at that point, right? So it's been great. Falcon and Winter Soldier, loving it, especially after this last episode 2. We'll put here's a spoiler alert.
Spoilers.
If you have not read the comics, take a moment, come back in like 3 minutes or whatever, a minute and a half. The fact that they are, okay, that's enough time for people to go. And then you're just going to have to scroll through and hope we get back to it. Is the fact that they brought in Isaiah Bradley.
Yes.
Was incredible. The fact that they are like, after episode 1, I was like, oh, okay, and coming off of WandaVision, which was, I just thought masterful, because they just let him play. It was absolute chef's kiss on that, right? Like, and we can go into all the nerd stuff and all the criticisms. I was like, but I like the fact that they were just like, let's do this weird kind of, like show in a show and throw some magic and and I was like, cool. And I had my payoff with wizards fighting, sorcerers. There's the shout out to Winter Soldier. So there's, so what I really appreciate what Winter Soldier is doing is really dialing in on race. And really making it like bringing the importance of when everybody lost their whole frappin' minds when Falcon became Captain America in the comics, right? And there was the whole Marvel backlash by a lot of the angry, young white male mob that was bumming, right? They were just like, "Oh, you can't change anything." And I was like, "Have you ever read a comic in the history of time?" But they weren't gigging it. They didn't, everybody, all the hatred poured onto Marvel, blah blah blah, and. So I love the fact that they're really digging into that and working with Isaiah Bradley and the whole Truth comic and the whole idea that, American experimentation did not start with Steve Rogers, because why would they start with the pretty white folks? They ain't going to start with the pretty white folks. They're going to start with the other folks first. They're going to start with our relatives, right, across the board. So the fact that they're diving into that, I'm stoked to see what's going to be happening with it. So that's going to make me really happy.
Yeah, the piece for me was really looking at Sam's imposter syndrome of I really don't want I don't feel good enough to do this. This is always going to be Steve, and not recognizing, realizing what the thing I do know about these series is that while they're going to like Inception the movies, they're not going to be, because there are people who won't watch the Disney Pluses, who won't get won't get into the series. So the timeline for the movies will always, so we're going to end up with Falcon being Captain America.
Oh yeah, no.
It's having this moment to dive into, the in-betweens and the things behind. And what's really interesting to me is that I used to blame Disney for, really world building out in a way that made us want to like dive into. For example, they gave us Little Mermaid, you got Little Mermaid the series. They gave us, Lion King. You have Simba's Pride, and continuing that visual kind of world building out. But really, that's a tale as old as time. Actually, that's our If I go back to my traditional stories, that's legit how our traditional stories worked. It was like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and it's all one story within a story within a story. So I'm really digging these series.
Well, they're really, in essence, they're just long form movies. If you go and watch it, I mean, they're episodic. Like, look at what just happened with the Snyder Cut, right? That's essentially, it's really just a long form series, right? If I could see anything in it, I'm sure it would be fun. No, there's no joke. I'm sorry. I've appreciated it. As many people, my problem with it is that it just creates, I don't have a problem with the movie itself. I actually thought it hit better. I like the fact that people of color were much more prevalent. Definitely gives old Joss Whedon, he's cooked in general at this point. It's like, oh yeah, no, sorry, brah. Yeah, your time's run up. I was like, I liked Avengers, but
no, I got my issues with him on that too.
You know what? But that's where I'm just like, I like the first one because you brought everybody together. That was it, and then everything. It. Anyway, all that being said, it is one of the parts that frustrates me is the fact that it gives so much fan empowerment, and I don't think necessarily in a good way. And that was the part where I will say that I like good storytelling, and I wanted to see, I like good movies. But I think there are too many, folks that are in our community that are saying, release the Snyder Cut now. I think that opens up a kind of a bad take, because it's like directors, tend to need editors. Even if they're really good, they've got to have editors. And so to say that you're going to put out a 4-hour film and now everyone's going to be like, see, if only we would get rid of the corporation and allow these artists to create their full vision. I'm like, I don't want to sit here for 7 hours to watch, Gunga Din or Gandhi again. I've watched director's cuts. I think they're good. I also think they're good for home video. I don't think they're good for necessarily general releases. Although I will say I do sit through Shakespeare. I'm like, 3-hour Shakespeare is fine for me. I'm like but it gives in my mind, it has empowered the fan base in the same way that we've seen things like, it just makes it too much easier to manipulate these spaces. Right. So that's one of my concerns. On the flip side, really rather than enjoying
a motorcycle in the background. What is going on?
That is my house. My neighbors have decided to drag race on the road.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, I had to look around. I was like, is that me? Am I riding a motorcycle? I don't even know. So I think that's a big issue around sort of like the way that, and we saw it happen with Star Wars, right? I think Star Wars tanked so bad because fans got way too involved. I won't say that I was like, I liked episode 7. I liked, seeing the Millennium Falcon. I thought it was fan service. I thought when it went to episode 8, I liked the way that they were world building and going in these kind of different directions. I thought there were some cool things. I thought it got really clunky because they were the studio forced them into too much. And then episode 9 was basically the studio being like, please salvage whatever's left on this. But by that point, there were too many people online that were throwing at. I mean, that's why Finn and Rose disappeared, right? The 2 people of color just absolutely, they got jar-jarred because too many fans, too many of the white boy fans got pissed off at the fact that they got screen time. They were Mary Sued, and here's a black guy that's now going to be a Jedi. Black guys can't be Jedis.
But little green things can.
Right. Exactly. So, so like that whole setup was I think really, like that's the thing about the Snyder Cut, not the cut itself. I like superhero movies. I actually thought it was not awesome, but I liked it. I liked it so much more than the original. I also think they're setting a new precedent because I'm like so mad about the Suicide Squad trailer. That looks like it's going to be fantastic. And it makes me angry because I I despised the first one. The first one I thought was an absolute, and in your comments, everybody can take me to task, but I felt the first Suicide Squad was an absolute dumpster fire. One, because I liked the comic and it was not the comic, which we all know. Two, it basically was like white supremacist fantasy time. All the black male characters ended up back in jail. The native guy is dead.
He didn't even get an intro. I was like, oh my God. Wait, we introed everybody but him. Pew!
Right?
Well, there we go. Yeah.
Done.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The black woman is like a villain without a sense, with nothing redeeming. So the black woman is the ultimate villain of the movie. The Chicano goes bye-bye, after he sacrifices himself because orale, my family, he's the cholo with the heart of gold, right? The white woman is super dependent on domestic violence, which is kind of that's kind of the shtick. I've read the comics. Nobody can, I know Harley Quinn's character, but I also they spent a lot of time in the last decade re-empowering her. And then they just shoved her back in the box being like, I love the Joker. I'm going to punch you in the face. Oh, we love you. And getting to see that. So graphic violence against women. The only person that walks out of it is who? The white guy. The white guy gets his girlfriend back. He gets the feels for his BIPOC friends, right? And that way he'll carry on their legacy. Absolute trash for that show, which is why I am so pissed off, because this one looks so good.
Well, didn't Margot Robbie, who plays Harley Quinn, have a hand in?
I think she did, but it's got kind of twisting it. The whole, John Cena, I'm like, you guys got, and the way that they're basically just brought a bunch of the whole point of the comic was that they were just killing off B-listers. That's why they're the Suicide Squad.
Exactly.
Harley's the only one that makes it through. Bloodsport might, Deadshot did. That was about it. Like, you had a couple of the A-listers, and then it's just a bunch of D-listers that they just churn. And that's the brilliance of the comic. If you go back and read it, it's fantastic because it's funny, because basically it is. They take X character that they went back through the catalog and they're like, hey, who's in the files from the 1950s that we created? Oh, it's Snowflake Man. Cool. He's on the Suicide Squad now.
Yep.
Right? And I think what they did in the first one was they tried to over diversify, right? Like, it's the problem that we see. It's like, I like diversity. I think it's really important. I want to see more characters of color. That's why I create comics. But when they came in there and did that, it was just like, hey, let's make Slipknot native. And it's just like, okay, but why? Oh, and you're going to kill him off in like 5. Why?
Don't even tell his story. That? He got no little cool trailer either. I was like,
he's not native in the comic. He doesn't need to be native in the movie. Just because you want to make it diverse for me, and all you're going to do is blow his head off. I'm cool without the diversity then, kids.
Exactly.
If you're going to pander, just keep it to yourself. If you're going to pander, I don't want it.
Exactly. So anyway.
The last two things I will say about this whole little piece that we're talking here is that one, when it comes to the Winter Soldier and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I love that they're daring to go where they're going to go, right? They're really showing Falcon and they're telling him that story from that perspective, right? And you feel it in these 2 episodes. So I hope that keeps going. I hope that trajectory keeps going for Falcon's story. But to go into Suicide Squad and Justice League, the only credit I'll give Suicide Squad is that, and people will hate me for it too, but they gave us Jared Leto, and we kind of felt like we didn't get what we needed from Suicide Squad.
True. Yeah.
And then the epilogue happens in Justice League, and my mind is blown. I'm just like, this was the Jared Leto Joker that I wanted. This is what I got. He's crazy. The way he communicates with Batman, and they both just mutually hate each other, but they understand that they can't live without each other either. Like they're like together. And that scene, I've watched it probably like 20 times.
No, it's good. And I think that I will absolutely agree with you on that one. That is the one thing that it was just like, hey, this is kind of what we had asked for. Didn't get it. Got it over here. Also reminds me why I like why the Joker has been so long lived. is because essentially, and I was joking about this, but the Joker is so long lived because he's essentially the worst button masher in the world. Like that's all I could come up with. Is like all of us that learn how to play games, we know the order, and we're the ones like flipping and Hadouken, and we do the whole thing. The Joker is basically your little sister that comes in and is just like, I win. And you're like, I lose. It doesn't matter to him. And that's infuriating. And I think that's why it's the ultimate, most brilliant struggle, because Batman is just all about order, right? Like, and the Joker is just about absolute chaos. I mean, it reminds us very much, he's the trickster, right? Like he is absolute chaos and disorder. And that's the part that makes it so brilliant, is that like, you don't know, today he's just grumpy. He'll murder the Penguin. Just cause. And it's just like, but he's supposed to be a bad guy. And it's just like, nah, he just didn't feel it. And the Penguin was just like, I don't like you, roly-poly. And then you're dead, you know? Or he just does stuff for the lulz. He's like, you know what? I just wanted to see what y'all would do. I'm not trying to take over. I just thought it would be fun for the day. Peace, you know, and then bounces. And that's why it's so frustrating to Batman, because what does Batman do with that? He's just like, I can't. Like Batman has a perfect answer for everybody. He has the kryptonite for Superman. He totally knows how to stop Wonder Woman. He knows how to stop this person. He's never been able to tag the Joker. Think about that. Batman has been able to literally everybody he has been able to tag through. He has a plan. He had, you know, the mother box. He had the whole computer system, right? In the whole setup. And the Joker is the only one he's never been able to figure out, because the Joker's a button masher. There's nothing you can do. He can beat everybody. He knows Superman's weakness. Martha, like we know, right? He can figure out everybody's weakness. There is no weakness for the Joker. The Joker is pure anarchy. And that is the reason also why I will give to you as well, Kenrick, that was one of the reasons why I liked that too. I was like, perfect. That was nice. Nice touch for the epilogue.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So we are actually going to move into our closing segment. And we always like to close the show with what is making us happy. As our guest co-host, Dr. Lee, just what is making you happy?
Oh my gosh, what is making me happy? I don't even think it's the nerd world. I think it's just this beauty that I've seen of, you know, this reawakening. You know, I mean, a lot of us getting vaccines, a lot of us are like all the grandparents at home, like, man, we've rolled this out in Native communities. Cherokee Nation and everybody in Oklahoma is doing better than Oklahoma itself. Like that fills me with absolute like righteous joy. Like, and digs deeper to the fact that, like, you know what, guys, even after all of this, after 400 years of you unleashing plagues and everything else, we haven't forgot who we are. We take care of the people, all the people. And that brings me the most like tear-inducing joy and beauty that I can think of how we take care of not just our people, but all the people. That's what we were put here for in this world. So yeah, I'm gonna be like, there's like that's like big thoughts. Like little thoughts. I don't know. I'm really happy. I got the Winnie the Pooh Lego set. So that made me really happy. I just got that like yesterday. It's over there in my closet right now. So I'm really happy about that.
Very cool. Marie, what about you?
Well, the same along those lines of the vaccine. My family all are full rounds of the COVID vaccine. We made it. We're here. And I just want to take this opportunity to give a huge shout out to the Northern Navajo Medical Center staff and volunteers that have been tireless. This is very emotional. So at the beginning of the month when I started, there were just lines and lines of cars. Well, yesterday was my second, so my arm's pretty sore. My second round, there was no wait. So you know that the volunteers and the staff were working tirelessly to get our communities taken care of, vaccinated, and light at the end of the tunnel. So that makes me so happy that my mom and dad and me and my brother are taken care of today. And our communities are well on the road to healing and being safe through this pandemic.
Yay.
Yeah.
That's good.
I just was reading up because for one of my classes about Oregon, I think it's a third of the Oregon population has been vaccinated through Indian Health Services. So yes, kudos. If it wasn't, here we are taking care of people again, but we don't get a story at the beginning. That's okay. Kenrick, what's making you happy?
I'm gonna take the same recipe with Lee. I like that idea of like, big picture, small picture idea when it comes to making you happy. So, I mean, big picture wise, it's making me happy is that I'm challenging myself again to make myself back to my fighting health.
Nice.
I used to do competitions for weightlifting. I used to run a nonprofit gym back home in Arizona. So like, I know what it takes to get me where I need to go. I have the tools, I have all the cool gadgets, but I lost the consistency, I think, with the pandemic, and we're talking about the reset, I think it was a reverse reset for me, because I went into the pandemic probably at the most healthiest I've been. And then the pandemic hit, and it was just like, well, I ain't doing nothing. I'm just not doing. I was Lee Francis on the couch watching movies. I was getting creative again. So yeah, I became creative again, and that means my butt was on a chair. I was hitting the internet, and so I kind of reverse reset myself, and but I'm back at it. And again, I'm like focusing on what do I need to do. And the number one thing is just to get up and get moving. And if that's like the only thing I can give out to Indian country and our fellow indigenous people, if you struggle with the same things that I struggle with, it's just about getting up and moving. And I don't care if that means you're walking. I don't care if that means you're doing a subtle jog. I don't care if that means you're just getting up and down from your chair. You just got to do something and be consistent. So like,
I need to now.
I'm getting up. I'll see y'all later.
Yeah. So big picture. I'm refocusing on my health. I'm going to make that a goal for me for the rest of the year and moving into next year. And then and hopefully we can showcase that at your next Comic-Con next year in 2022. I would love to see Wrong Indian at a booth at your Comic-Con. Small thing that's making me happy. I got a smartwatch. It's smart. It's from a company that is kind of fruity, but not gonna plug them. But it's a smartwatch, and I was able to buy my wife a purse that she loves. So if I could buy my wife a purse every day to make her happy, I would. So small things. So yeah, that's where I'm at. That's why I'm happy.
So, actually, what has made me happy? Yesterday was my daughter's birthday, and I have one picture. I actually, we planned a trip for her to go to the zoo. It was a couple other families, some other kids. She didn't get a birthday because, like, legit, all the things are popping up on Facebook because, like, we were doing what was it? The pandemic shutdown Spirit Week happened where we just stayed in and we're putting on funny socks or whatever. So being able to not just have her a little birthday and have her a little birthday with people, but actually just sitting in that moment and not worrying about taking a pic. Because I was telling Joe, I said, I kind of regret we didn't take pictures. And then he also reminded me that, how many birthday pictures do you have? It's like, oh yeah, you're right. We didn't take pictures. Except, when you had the little disposable camera, maybe then. So I actually really just enjoyed being in the moment, being there with them, losing my son at the zoo. He's 2. He literally took off because we haven't had an opportunity to practice, going places and holding hands. And what do we do when we lose mommy and daddy? Nope. Took off. I was like, my husband goes, do you have Jared? No, I thought you had Jared. We both took off. And then he comes running back. It's like, oh God. And I'd like to say that was the only time that happened. It happened a couple of times. Please, Grandma, don't say nothing. Nokomis, I'm sorry. We lost your grandson. But we did bring him back. So that was nice. But again, haven't had those opportunities to train them to do. I mean, they haven't been in a store in forever. So restaurants, they will not know how to act. But that's fine. It is what it is.
Will anybody know how to act when we go back out into the world?
Nope.
I won't.
Nope.
But hopefully you'll know how to act, and that is subscribe, comment, like, rate us 5 stars, do all the things for Wrong Indian. Thank you guys so much for listening. Also, website. We do have the website. Please make sure you go. It's the hub for all things Wrong Indian. It's got all the episodes. It has all the YouTubes, if you like Spotify, Apple, whatever your podcast place of choice is, you can find it on the WrongIndianPodcast.com.
I'm in good company. I love this. I've seen all the people down on the side. It's so pretty.
Also, plug yourself, Mr. Dr. Francis.
Mr. Dr. Mister.
Let everyone know where to find you, what you got coming up, all the things.
Find me on Twitter at LeeFrancis4. I just joined Clubhouse. If anybody out there is on the Clubhouse, also under LeeFrancis4. So we're going to be launching some cool nerd, everybody jibber jabber and Indigi-Nerd style. I'm hoping to start up some rooms and where we get to do more of this kind of stuff and chat. Always find us at Red Planet Red Planet Books and Comics, Red Planet Books, letter N, comics.com. That's where we got everything that you can find us for, and then just search the web. My God, it's everywhere. Just anything Red Planet or Native Realities, we'll find that. We'll be doing some cool announcements. We got all sorts of stuff coming up. Check us out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. I don't know whatever the kids are doing right now. I think they're going to start moving back to like cups and strings here pretty soon. We'll be on that too. Hashtag cup and string. So yeah, thanks. That's where you can check me out.
All right, man. That's it. That's our episode. You have a good one.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. As always.